Okay guys, so I decided since I'm down here, I'm just going to do this last video from chapter 8 and have it done. I don't really have slides prepared, but I have some problems here. So this last section is actually in section 8.5, if you're looking for it in the chapter, and it's how we simplify a complex fraction. And you guys are probably thinking, well, all fractions are complex, but not really. Remember how I always made a big deal about never leaving a fraction something like this? That's a simple complex fraction. Is that an oxymoron? I don't know. And you know that one of the ways we did this was to actually think of this as 1/2 divided by 2/3, which becomes 1/2 times 3/2, which is 3/4. Now that's not so difficult for one like that, but you're going to see that as these get more complex, you're not going to want to do it that way. So I'm going to show you a different way, and some of you already know this, to simplify this fraction. If I look at the denominators here, the least common denominator of the two fractions within the fraction is 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the numerator of this complex fraction by 6 and the denominator. So 1/2 times 6 is 3, and 2/3 times 6, 3 goes into 6, 2 is 4, and there's my fraction. Now I think you're going to find that that is really an easier way to do this. So if I had 1/3 over 1/x, the common denominator of these two would be 3x. When I multiply the numerator, the 3's are going to merge into 1. That's just going to be x. Here the x's are going to merge, and I'm going to get x over 3. Now you might say, oh, well, I just like this way better. All right, that's okay for those, but when you get to these next ones, these are going to get a lot more complicated. So now let's take a look at one like this. Now, this is actually a problem in a problem. So if you wanted to do this the long way, you would work with the numerator. Get a common denominator. Okay, it would be 6. That'd be 4, 6 minus 1, 5, 6 would be negative 1, 6. Then you'd have to do the same thing with the denominator. You'd have to get a common denominator, make them both 9s, 3 9s and 2 9s is 5 9s. Then you'd have a fraction over a fraction. Then you'd have to do the division. That's one way to do it. I am here to show you an easier way to do it. Just look at all your denominators of the fractions within the fraction. What's the least common denominator of all those 4 fractions of 3, 6, 3, and 9? Hope you can figure out that that is 18. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fraction, multiply the numerator by 18 and the denominator. Now remember, what we're doing is I'm multiplying this by 18. Now when I multiply 18 by that fraction, the 3 is going to simplify in 18 and leave a 6. That's going to give me 12. When I multiply here, 6 is going to go in 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. I have to do the same thing with the denominator. I multiply 18 times 1/3. That's easy. That's 6. 18 times 2 9s. 9 goes into 18 too. 2 times 2 is 4. So my final answer is going to be negative 3/10. Boom. That's not so bad. Did you follow that? If not, rewind, go back, watch it again. I know I'm going fast, but you can handle this. Okay, so now what if I have this? This is a complex fraction. Fractions and fractions. So I could simplify the numerator, do that as its own subtraction problem, do this as its own subtraction problem, then divide those answers, but I don't think I want to do it that way. So I'm going to look at all the fractions within the fractions. The only denominator I see is x. So I am going to multiply by x over x, which is just like by multiplying by 1, so I'm not changing the value. So when I multiply x times x here, I get x squared. When I multiply x times this, the x's become 1, and I just get minus 1 over x times 1 is x times 1 over x is minus 1. So that would be my answer, but you know I want all these answers in simplest form. This is not in simplest form because I can tell that that numerator can get factored, difference of 2 squares, and then these two factors merge into 1, so my final answer is just x plus 1. And no, I don't need the parentheses in that final answer. Okay? We getting that? Don't you wish you could kind of like when we were in class rewind me? So like if you missed something, you could go back, but see in class, you gotta really, really pay attention. All right, so whoops, let's go back and let's just keep this going. Okay, I'll go down. Okay, I got one more, even more complicated one. Oh boy. Now, if you need a break, just take a deep breath, pause this because it's going to be a stinker. Okay. Now, this is really a mess. I mean, I would not want to have to try to figure that out, try to figure this out, then divide the answers. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the denominators. All 4 denominators. What would be the least common denominator of those 4 denominators? I see an a plus 1, and the most it appears in any one denominator is 1, and I see an a minus 1. There we go. So I'm going to multiply numerator and denominator by that LCD. Now remember, you're just forgetting this whole bottom half right now. You're going to multiply this times this fraction, and then this times this fraction. So can you see that when I multiply this numerator by this first fraction, this a plus 1 and that a plus 1, because this one's in a denominator and this is not, okay, those are going to become 1, and I'll just have 1 times a minus 1, which is a minus 1. When I multiply this by this, the a minus 1s are going to merge to become 1, and I'm just going to have plus 1 times a plus 1, which is a plus 1. All right. And what's going to happen in the denominator? I got to be a little careful because I got a minus here. When I multiply this by this a plus 1 and that one will merge to become 1, and I'll just get an a minus 1. When I multiply this times this, the a minus 1s will merge to become 1, and I'm going to have minus the quantity a plus 1. Now, what's that going to do? That's going to make this become a negative and that become a negative. So if I simplify the numerator, a plus a is 2a. The negative 1s cancel to 0. In the denominator, these are going to cancel to 0 now. And I'm going to have negative 1 and negative 1 is negative 2. And what does that simplify to? I am allowed to make the 2 over negative 2 is negative 1, so I have negative 1a or negative a for my answer. So, this is the last lesson in chapter 8. We will probably do some review, and then I'm still thinking about how I'm gonna do a test, but we'll do something to make sure that you guys are staying honest out there, okay? So this is gonna wrap up chapter 8 for us. There's gonna be a worksheet on complex fractions for you to work on, and hang in there, guys, okay?